Thank you, Nina and Ricky. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News on tonight's headlines. We're following the latest on the delicate ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, still awaiting final approval from Israel's government. A U.S. official said the deal is expected to hold, but the parliamentary vote has been pushed to Saturday.
On the ceasefire, yes, I am confident, and I fully expect that implementation will begin, as we said, on Sunday.
President Biden opened his address yesterday with a focus on the historic ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas, which brought an end to the 15-month conflict in Gaza. Earlier, the outgoing president gave a sarcastic response when asked who between him and Donald Trump would be credited for the ceasefire.
Thank you.
Folks, credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
And the news starts now. We're following the latest on the delicate ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, still awaiting final approval from Israel's government. A U.S. official said the deal is expected to hold, but the parliamentary vote has been pushed to Saturday, which would also delay the first hostage release from Sunday to Monday.
On the ceasefire, yes, I am confident, and I fully expect that implementation will begin, as we said, on Sunday. Look, it's not exactly surprising that in a process and a negotiation that has been this challenging and this fraught, you may get a loose end. We're tying up that loose end as we speak. I've been on the phone in one way or another all morning with Brett McGurk, with our Qatari friends, and I'm very confident that this is moving forward, and we'll see the start of implementation of the agreement on Sunday.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had earlier accused Hamas of backing out on part of the agreement, but officials now say that issue has been resolved. The first phase of the deal involves a 6-week ceasefire and exchanges of Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners. In the meantime, fighting continues. Israeli airstrikes have reportedly killed more than 80 people in the last 24 hours, according to Hamas officials in Gaza. Netanyahu faces immense pressure to sign off on the deal, but doing so could cost him support from hardliners in his cabinet, possibly even triggering early elections.
Therefore, if this reckless deal is approved and implemented, the Jewish Power Party will give the resignation letter to the Prime Minister. The Jewish Power Party will not be part of the government and will withdraw from it. If the war on Hamas is renewed, that's what I said to the Prime Minister, with force in order to decide and realize the unachieved goals of the war, we will return to the government.
Families of the hostages remain anxious. Activists fear the complexity of the agreement could cause it to collapse at any point, with both sides deeply distrustful of each other.
Well, the cabinet vote is supposed to be tomorrow morning. I hope that will be tomorrow morning, and it's supposed to be today, and we are really waiting for the official proof that the deal is signed and we can go on. And on Sunday we will see hostages here in Israel. We are very tired. It's very hard days to hold it. We're broken, and we really hope that the deal will sign soon.
We really hope and pray that his effort will be fruitful and we can get all our hostages back as soon as possible. This has been a tremendously amount of pressure on the families, and we just hope this period will be over. We don't see any point in the schedule, this lengthy schedule of the deal. We think that everyone could be back home in 2 weeks.
In an update, the Israeli Prime Minister's office has confirmed that the Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal is expected to begin as originally scheduled on Sunday. And this comes after hours of uncertainty over the timing of final cabinet approval. The office stated, pending approval by the Security Cabinet and the government and the agreement taking effect, the release of the hostages will be implemented according to the planned framework in which the hostages are expected to be released on Sunday. The Philippines has welcomed the long-awaited ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, as well as the release of hostages in Gaza. Spokesperson for the Department of Foreign Affairs, Teresita Daza, emphasized that the Philippines called for all parties to uphold their responsibilities under international law, and this includes protecting civilians, particularly women and children, and ensuring humanitarian assistance reaches those in need. Daza also reaffirmed the Philippines' unwavering commitment to a two-state solution, one that addresses the rights and needs of both Palestinian and Israeli civilians and aims to bring about lasting peace and security in the region. President Biden opened his address yesterday with a focus on the historic ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas, which brought an end to the 15-month conflict in Gaza. He took credit for the negotiations, stating that the ceasefire plan developed by his team would be mainly implemented by the next administration. Earlier, the outgoing president gave a sarcastic response when asked who between him and Donald Trump would be credited for the ceasefire.
Thank you.
Books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump, who had previously threatened to destroy Hamas if a deal was not reached before his inauguration, quickly claimed credit for the breakthrough on social media. Notably, the incoming president has sent his envoy to join the negotiations in Doha, where he was present for the final 96 hours leading up to the deal.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out.
President Trump's pressure has clearly played out in a productive way, because we know now that the deal, or the semblance of the deal, is quite similar to what has been on the table since May of 2024. And it's clear that there is a Trump effect. I think more broadly, we have seen the Trump administration come in with a new, very transactional approach. And in the run-up to his inauguration, he has used bluster and hardline tactics as part of his negotiation sort of process. This is not the first time we're witnessing this, and I think it is proving to be effective.
Thank you.
Books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Both teams should be getting the credit for this. Certainly, the Biden team has been leading and managing negotiations for quite some time, but it has been abundantly clear that Biden himself has been unwilling to exert the necessary pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu. And that has been really problematic and a cause of the longer-term obstruction we have seen.
Tensions in the Pacific are escalating, with U.S. Congressman Michael McCaul warning that China's aggressive actions could spark a global conflict. In a recent interview, he described his observations during a visit to the region. Take a look.
You know, it's always fascinating. Australia, you know, the way it's positioned from a geography standpoint, it really is, I would say, kind of the bulkhead or the beachhead to counter China. You know, when I traveled to Taiwan, they did war games around the island in a very intimidating way. The South China Sea, we saw, you know, these warships from China with heavy water cannons in a very belligerent way hitting Philippine vessels. They warned us that we are in Chinese sovereign territory, we should turn back and go home. And I think this belligerence is actually backfiring against China to some extent with the island nations. The point is, though, they're getting very aggressive, and we need deterrence in the region, and we need a counter to that to avoid a conflict which could escalate to the next World War III.
McCaul highlighted the importance of the AUKUS alliance involving the U.S., UK, and Australia, as a critical measure for maintaining regional peace.
And so that's why AUKUS, I envision it was so important that we enhance this alliance between the United States, the UK, and Australia when it comes both to submarines, nuclear submarines, which are really the crown jewel of our military. I call it the beast in the ocean. And then Pillar 2, which is innovation in technology, which is AI-driven quantum computing. If you study warfare, you know that the next wave, next generation of defense articles are going to be AI-driven. And I think this is what Chairman Xi, when he looks at this and the landscape, is what really keeps him up at night.
China is gravely concerned about it. We are open to normal military cooperation between any country, but we firmly oppose relevant countries cobbling together exclusive groupings, building bilateral or multilateral military alliances targeting China, creating division and confrontation and stoking bloc confrontation. The Asia-Pacific is a big stage for peace and development, not a wrestling ground for geopolitical competition. China is a cooperation partner for all countries, not a challenge to anyone. In disregard of the concerns of regional countries and the international community, the US, UK, and Australia have kept sending signals of AUKUS expansion, which severely impacted the peace and stability of the Asia-Pacific. Many regional countries are deeply concerned about it.
As tensions grow, McCall underscored the need for stronger alliances and cutting-edge defense capabilities to prevent further escalation.
Well, we got a lot of the major work done. This is a congressionally driven program issue. It was bipartisan, as it should be. The submarines were a very important part of this, but Pillar 2 is as well. I think what we need to do, we have the funding for the submarines, but we need to ensure that Congress's intent is fulfilled. And what do I mean by that? In the bill, we said that the president, once he certifies that their export control laws are comparable to ours, and that being UK and Australia, then he shall deliver defense articles. Doesn't say may, doesn't say discretionary.
He also expressed concerns about existing restrictions that could delay delivery of critical defense technologies under the agreement.
They have created an excluded technologies list, which in fact does exempt or accept technologies from the exemption of ITAR, which is the international regulations. So we need to work on that. And I've been assured at higher levels in the United States military that they are going to loosen those restrictions. But that is something that we, both in legislatively.
He also reminded the public that the roots of the AUKUS Pact date back to the previous administration.
But also by oversight. And I think educating the new administration coming in. This was, the inception of all this was Secretary Pompeo meeting with the OD&I in Australia during the prior administration. So I'm very hopeful that they have ownership. They will continue this vigorously.
So what does it mean for the AUKUS deal that Trump hasn't really mentioned it, either in his speeches or in his social media truth platform? It could signal trouble ahead. Trump has a history of brushing off issues he doesn't fully understand or see the benefit of. And that's raised questions and concerns about the future of U.S. involvement in this important Pacific alliance. With things still up in the air, it's definitely something to watch out, as it could affect both U.S. relations with its allies and the overall balance of power in the region. Mark Carney, former Bank of Canada governor, has launched his bid to lead the country's ruling Liberal Party, positioning himself as a fresh alternative to Justin Trudeau. Speaking in Edmonton, Carney pledged to focus on reviving Canada's struggling economy amid growing tariff threats from the U.S.
The Bank of Canada's former Governor Mark Carney launched a bid to replace Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as leader of the country's ruling Liberal Party on Thursday. Speaking at an event in the western city of Edmonton, he cast himself as outside of Trudeau's unpopular government and said that his top focus would be Canada's struggling economy, which faces the looming threat of tariffs as high as 25% from incoming US President Donald Trump.
I am going to be completely focused on getting our economy back on track. I've helped manage multiple crises, and I've helped save 2 economies. I know how business works, and I know how to make it work for you. I've worked around the world, but I'm grounded in what I learned right here in Edmonton. To be responsible, to be fair, to stay humble, to work together, and to never, ever give up.
Despite his pitch, Carney did have close ties to Trudeau. He was named the chair of a task force on economic growth last year. Carney worked for Goldman Sachs before joining the Canadian Finance Ministry in 2004. He was named Bank of Canada Governor in 2007 and later a Governor of the Bank of England. His main rival looks to be former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. She resigned last month over policy differences with Trudeau. Fallout from that led to Trudeau resigning as Prime Minister. The Liberal Party is alarmed by poor polling numbers ahead of an election this year, and should a new Prime Minister be named by early March, he or she is unlikely to be in office for long. The minority government could be toppled in Parliament as soon as the end of March, and that would trigger an election which polls say the official opposition Conservatives could win.
Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has been sentenced to 14 years in prison for land corruption. A court in Rawalpindi delivered the verdict inside the prison where Khan has been held since August 2023. He and his wife, Bushra Bibi, were convicted of accepting land from a real estate developer in exchange for illegal favors during his premiership. Both had pleaded not guilty. Bushra Bibi, who was out on bail, has also been taken into custody. Khan's party calls the case baseless, saying it will collapse under scrutiny. This verdict is a major blow for Khan, whose party performed well in the 2024 election but failed to gain a majority. Jailed since 2023, Khan faces multiple cases including corruption and inciting violence following his removal from office in 2022.
Today, the trial court of the National Accountability Bureau has convicted Imran Khan and he sentenced him to 14 years imprisonment. And he has also convicted the spouse of Imran Khan to 7 years imprisonment. We consider this to be a verdict which is not based on fact, it's against the evidence. It is actually a witch hunt. It's political victimization. Khan Sahib has done no wrong. He has committed no crime. He is simply there in the jail just to put a pressure on him, and it's a political victimization. We would file an appeal against these judgments and sentences in the Islamabad High Court, and we hope he will get justice, inshallah.
We are going to appeal this in the High Court, and we will definitely go and take all the legal remedies available to us.
A massive fire broke out yesterday at a giant battery storage plant in Northern California, forcing hundreds of people to evacuate their homes. Flames and thick smoke billowed into the sky as firefighters battled the blaze at the Moss Landing power plant. Now, this plant stores energy from sources like solar panels, but these batteries can be incredibly dangerous when they catch fire. Officials ordered about 1,500 people to leave the area as a precaution. The company that owns the plant says everyone was safely evacuated and an investigation into the cause of the fire is underway. Schools in the area are closed today as a safety measure. Meanwhile, firefighters are still battling to contain nearly 40,000 acres of wildfires that have claimed at least 27 lives now and destroyed over 12,300 structures. And some residents have been allowed back into evacuation zones, but tens of thousands are still anxiously waiting to see if their homes are intact.
I think we're making it pretty clear that there are multiple reasons why we cannot let people in yet. Yes, we're trying to work towards that. I'm going to say it's probably at least a week out. You've heard that already. Our search and rescue operations continue in both the Eaton and Palisades area. Searches are continuing, and we still have a variety of work and structures to go through. But even as we're going through some of these grids, there are areas that we are holding because we believe there may be deceased victims there. We have to hold for the right time and the right resources to process the scene correctly, and that's going to take a little while.
We're looking at repopulation efforts. That's what it is right now. The fire is slowly being contained, and the safety, I mean the hazards because of the fire aren't so severe, but at the same time we need to get residents back in. So that's our primary focus. That's the primary focus of not only the Sheriff's Department, but the Fire Department, the Public Health, and the utilities, is to get residents back into the populated areas. So even though a home is still standing as opposed to a home that's burned down, there's still safety hazards out there. We have to remember on the main roads, there's down trees, down power lines, there's debris. It was a very, very windy night. I mean, I was here that evening and the winds were gusts of 100 miles an hour. So there was debris everywhere. And we're doing a systematic approach to that as far as clearing. So some areas where houses may not be burned and residents want to get back in, they need to understand that it's still not safe because of the hazards in the road.
California Attorney General Rob Bonta is cracking down on price gouging, warning businesses and landlords against taking advantage of wildfire victims.
Some say, well, there's a higher demand, and we can charge these prices based on these higher prices based on the increased demand. Well, demand be damned. You must follow the law. And the law does not allow you to increase prices more than 10% from before the declaration of emergency. Today, I'm announcing that DOJ has opened multiple active investigations into price gouging reports, and we will prosecute any crimes we find, be it landlords, short-term rentals, or hotels, price gouging evacuees, or predatory buyers swooping in with low-ball property offers, whether it be scams or looting. You can be sure we will hold you accountable.
The fire's causes are still under investigation, with officials focusing on a scorched slope as the possible origin of the largest blaze, the Palisades fire, which is 27% contained. The Eaton fire is 55% contained. As focus shifts to recovery, Governor Gavin Newsom has promised a large-scale rebuilding effort similar to the Marshall Plan, potentially costing tens of billions of dollars. Meanwhile, the National Weather Service warns of dangerous fire conditions returning next week, along with concerns about mudslides on the scorched hillsides. Meanwhile, Hawaii's Kilauea began spewing lava in a new eruption on Wednesday and Thursday, and this marked its fourth eruptive phase since it came back to life in late December. Intermittent lava activity has been observed in the crater at the summit of Kilauea since the volcano reawakened on December 23. The Hawaiian Volcano Observatory said it was possible the lava fountain's height would increase as more gas-rich lava reaches the surface. The Hawaiian Volcano Observatory said it will continue to closely monitor the eruption and that it was in contact with Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and the Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency about eruptive hazards. And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. And a major setback for SpaceX. Its Starship rocket broke apart just minutes after launching from Texas on Thursday, sending flights over the Gulf of Mexico scrambling to avoid falling debris.
A SpaceX Starship rocket broke apart in space minutes after launching from Texas on Thursday. Its breakup was seen over the skies of the Caribbean. Clips online showed fiery debris above the Turks and Caicos Islands, and Reuters captured a view of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. The company said it lost contact 8 minutes after liftoff, when its upgraded Starship upper stage, the top part of the rocket, it was carrying the company's first test payload of mock satellites.
We did lose all communications with the ship, so I mean that is essentially telling us that we had an anomaly with that upper stage. So we've were just coming up to the end of that ascent burn for the ship when we stopped when we started to lose a couple of the engines. We saw those dropping out, and then we did lose telemetry from the ships.
Elon Musk said a preliminary assessment showed an internal leak of liquid oxygen fuel led to the rocket's breakup. The incident caused airline flights over the Gulf of Mexico to reroute to avoid debris. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration said it briefly slowed and diverted planes around the debris area, but that normal operations have resumed. The FAA will likely open a mishap investigation that would ground Starship and check if debris fell on populated areas or outside the hazard zone. A probe could delay Musk's goal of 12 Starship tests this year, depending on fixes and an FAA investigation. Though Musk, after the incident, said on X that, quote, "Nothing so far suggests pushing next launch past next month." He has repeatedly criticized the FAA for overreaching and making politically motivated decisions. Thursday's mission was SpaceX's 7th Starship test since 2023, part of Musk's plan to build a rocket for Mars travel and launching satellites. SpaceX's test-to-failure method has led to big failures before, but Thursday's happened during a mission phase it had passed before.
Nintendo finally lifted the lid on its next-gen console, announcing the Switch 2. Take a look.
Nintendo has finally revealed a successor to its big-selling Switch game console. The Japanese firm said Thursday that the Switch 2 would launch later this year. Its most obvious upgrade is a bigger screen compared to the original. The company said games from the first Switch would be playable on the new device, but not always fully compatible. It didn't reveal a price or many other details. Nintendo said more information would come at an event in early April. Thursday's news had been long awaited. The original Switch console transformed the fortunes of the Kyoto-based firm, after its earlier Wii U device proved a flop. Nintendo has sold more than 145 million units of the Switch worldwide. Its life has been extended by models with updated hardware and a series of hit games from franchises like Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda. But the console has been on the market since 2017, leaving gamers and investors both keen for an update. One analyst told Reuters that the Switch 2 would reinvigorate hardware sales for the company. However, another expressed disappointment that the device appeared to be more like an upgrade than an all-new model. Nintendo shares fell over 6% in early trades Friday following the news, having scaled all-time highs the day before.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend. Good night.